Hello and welcome to the Andalusia Knits podcast. I'm Jordan, and this is a series on my YouTube channel where I take you through what I've been knitting on for the last few weeks, what I've been designing on for the last few weeks. And normally these come out about every other week, but it's been a hot minute since I have put one of these out. Over the last month or so, I've been variously afflicted with apathy and with actual illness, and I just couldn't be bothered to make any of these videos, but I've been knitting diligently behind the scenes. I've got quite a bit of stuff to show you today. No finished objects, but several things that I don't believe I have shown on the podcast yet, so that's exciting. And I got my cat here. I don't know if you can see him in the corner. Hopefully he stays quiet and well behaved for the duration of this. But yeah, I got several things, exciting things to talk about today. So let's get started with some of my works in progress. So first up today, I want to take a look at the Yoke sweater that I have been working on for a while now. As I was pulling my stuff out today, I was excited because I'm to a point in the sweater. It's like I'm not finished yet, but I'm like I've got basically the bottom from the bottom to the underarm is complete at this point. And I was like, dang, this has not been too bad. I think I started working on this like maybe the beginning of September. And yeah, it usually takes me like a month or so to get through a sweater. And then I went back to Ravelry, to the project page I made for this. And no, I did not start this at the beginning of September. I started this at the beginning of August. And I've forgotten, it is a little bit longer than normal because my first go round with the body, it was just a little bit too wide. So I had to I knit several inches of that and then had to restart because it was just a little bit too big. So there was that one false start, but no, I have fully been knitting on this for almost 3 months at this point, and I'm ready to be done. And I'm getting close. So I think you've seen this before, but I have the body complete. And I've just done some like big chunky stripes. This is Brooklyn Tweed Loft in various shades of blue and gray on here. But I think you've seen this part. So this is the body from the bottom to the underarm. And I have also now finished both of the sleeves from the cuff to the underarm. And I love these things. Like, they look a little silly, but I would honestly, unironically, wear these as just like sleeve warmers in the privacy of my own home. I guess that's kind of dumb. Like, I've got my sleeves pushed up on this. Why would I just pull these down? But I've been having a lot of fun wearing these around the house just as loose sleeves. So basically, I have everything to the underarms now complete, and so now it's time for me to join the body and the sleeves and start doing the actual yoke shaping. And if you have watched any of the previous episodes of the podcast where I've talked about this sweater, I have had lots of like worries and issues that I was going to have to like think through and figure out when I got to this point, to the point where it's time to actually do the yoke shaping. And so in the book that I'm using to help guide me through this, which is Knitting in the Old Way by Priscilla Gibson Roberts, and I've talked about this on the podcast before too. I've got an entire video where I talk about all of my knitting books, and I talk quite a bit about this one because I use this one a lot. But basically this has just like a bunch of like recipes and schematics for a bunch of the traditional sweater shapes. And so I've been using it because I've never knit any sort of yoke sweater before. So I've been using this as a guide, and it had some things in the book that it's a very useful book, but it doesn't it makes some assumptions about the knowledge you have as a knitter. And those assumptions about my knowledge were incorrect. So they were like saying things like very matter-of-factly and plainly, like I should know like how to do this and why to do this, but I did not. So for example, one of the main things it just assumes that you understand like the concept of how to join the body and the sleeves together from the bottom up, and I did not. But there is a really useful video that Roxanne Richardson has put out about knitting yoke sweaters in general, where she goes through the process of how to like join join the sleeves and the body together. So I've solved that problem. I understand like how the garment is going to be constructed at this point. But then another issue that I was running into in the book was that it offers two different ways to do a circular yoke sweater. You can do what they call a full yoke sweater, which is where you begin the yoke shaping immediately after you reach the underarms from the bottom up. Or you can do shoulder yoke shaping, which is basically where you leave, you don't do any sort of shaping from the underarm to like halfway up your chest. And then once you get to halfway up your chest, that's when you start doing the actual yoke shaping. And that was another thing. It just assumed that like I would know why I would want to do one or the other, and I absolutely did not. But once again, the Roxanne Richardson video came in really handy, and she talks about how some yoke sweaters suggest that shoulder only shaping from the like halfway up the shoulder to the top, because for that most people the rate of change in the size of your body from the underarm to halfway up the chest is not going to be as drastic as the rate of change in the shape and size of your body from halfway up the chest to the top of your shoulders. So if you leave the shaping to just like the top half of the chest, you can avoid some like tightness or sometimes in the lower chest area around the underarms. And we have a visitor. He likes to come in and comment. He likes to try to eat my hair, so I'm gonna hopefully prevent him from doing that on camera. That's a little weird habit of his. But yeah, so the yoke sweater, I understand what I'm doing now. I understand how I'm going to do it. And I think I have a plan, because I'm going to do the shoulder yoke shaping where I'm not doing the yoke shaping from the underarm to halfway up the chest. But the book also says it has like several different options for different ways to do things, but then it doesn't always like explain exactly why you would want to do one or the other. But I think I figured it out now. So in addition to starting the yoke shaping halfway up my chest, I'm going to do what is basically some light raglan shaping until I get to that halfway point. That was another thing that they suggested for if you're knitting the sweater in a fine yarn, which presumably I am. Like I said, this is Brooklyn Tweed Loft, which is a fingering weight yarn. So presumably that's what they would consider a fine weight yarn. But yeah, so basically they're telling you for that first half before you start the yoke shaping to do some raglan shapings, raglan decreases at the places where the sleeve and the body are coming together at that like seam line or whatever. And so I'm gonna do that, I think, just because like I'm worried that that I've erred on the side of like having too much ease. Like I guess my thought was like it would be better to have too much ease than not enough ease. And so I'm going to do that raglan shaping because I think if anything, like the circumference is going to be a little bit too big for my liking as opposed to a little bit too small. So basically, yeah, you do raglan shaping until about halfway up the sweater, and then you begin the actual yoke shaping, which is reduced because you've been taking out stitches with the raglan shaping instead of the book normally suggests 3 decrease rounds where you do a bunch of rapid decreases for the yoke shaping. But because you've been doing the raglan shaping for the first half, you omit that first round of decreases. So I believe the first like actual yoke shaping round is like a full like 2/3 up the chest, up your chest before you actually do that. So that's kind of crazy, but hopefully I think it's going to work out. It'll be fine. And if it's not, I can always just rip it back down to the underarm and try something else. But I'm excited to get started on this. I kind of been putting it off just so I can talk about the process of joining everything together as a yoke. But yeah, I'm ready to be done with this. It's been going for a few months at this point, and I'm excited to have it. Like I'm really pumped at like how lightweight this yarn is, just how like ridiculously woolen spun this Brooklyn Tweed Loft is. It's crazy how light it is. I think it's definitely I don't think or I think that the fact that there aren't any seams, this is a seamless sweater, I think that's going to be fine. I think it's going to be lightweight enough that it's going to be able to support its own weight without a lot of stretching. So yeah, ready to get this done. I'm fine. We're finally into the weather around here where I've actually started wearing my hand knit sweaters. So it's definitely sweater season at this point, and it's just a matter of yeah, getting this top half done. And I feel like maybe I'm a little too like ignorantly optimistic about how quickly I'll be able to fly through this thing, because while there will, there will be some, decreases every, as I move up the shaping, like it's gonna, every round is gonna get shorter and shorter, but still at the bottom when I first join, I'm gonna have a full like 300 or 400 stitches on the needles. So it might start out a little bit of a slog, but hopefully as I press on, it will get easier and easier to do that. But yeah, so that's my yoke sweater. It's almost done, ready to be done with this thing, ready to be wearing this thing. And yeah, hopefully next time you see it, it will either be finished or close to it. So next up, I have a project that I don't believe I've shown yet on the podcast, but that I'm actually almost already complete with. And that is a pillowcase that I have been working on. So if you've watched any of the episodes in the past, you may have seen a couple episodes where I was knitting on a log cabin baby blanket for my cousins-in-law. And I got that finished up probably a month or so ago, and their baby shower's coming up at the beginning of November, and I had a ton of yarn left over, and I was trying to figure out something else that I could knit to go with the blanket. And my first thought was to do some sort of stuffed animal or something, but I didn't like. I wanted to like use the yarns that I already had, like in the colors that they wanted. And so I just, yeah, I couldn't really figure out how to make like a stuffed animal or something work. And so I went a little basic, but I've been knitting on a pillowcase to go with the blanket. And basically at this point, it's really nothing to write home about. It's two garter stitch squares that I have worked on at this point. And so now it's going to be a matter of seaming these up on three sides, so along the two edges and along the bottom here, and then on one of these panels I'm going to continue to knit some more to like have it like fold over kind of like in an envelope shape, and then do buttons and buttonholes to seam it all together. So it's not, like I said, it's not anything particularly like revolutionary, but I've never done any sort of pillowcase or anything like this before. So it's been fun, yeah, like fun thinking about like having like this new object that I've never tried before. And it's fun because I've never done any sort of like button band on any sort of like sweater or cardigan or any sort of like home good or anything like that. So it's my first time doing buttons. And I was a little disappointed. I just ended up getting these just like plain black buttons from Hobby Lobby. It was really annoying. I went in assuming that like the buttons are going to be like the most low maintenance part of like a knitting project, but it was so annoying trying to find machine washable buttons, like, and like a lot of them that said they weren't machine washable buttons were like clearly like still made out of plastic. So like what kind of like precious plastic are you like casting these from that they have to be hand washed? So I found it's just like some like black shiny ones, but like they're the correct size I wanted and the correct thickness. So it was kind of like a beggars can't be choosers sort of scenario once I realized like how many like delicate buttons there are for sale in the world. But yeah, so I got that. I got the pillow insert. And I think I did a pretty good job with the sizing. That's kind of a crazy thing. Like normally, like when you knit something that's not a sweater, not or socks, like most knitting stuff like doesn't have to have like super accurate dimensions. But when it comes to like things like pillows, like I mean, I'm sure you can find some like weird dimensioned pillows, but like if you want to like just go out and be able to like buy a pillow that's going to fit the pillowcase, you kind of have to like pay attention to the gauge and the size of what you're knitting. But I think everything is going to work out. The squares themselves are like, they're not exactly squares. It ended up being closer to like 18 inches by 17 inches, but it's close enough. And the pillow itself is only 18 inches by 18 inches, but at the same time, it's kind of super thick. So I think it'll be fine. I think it'll fill out the case fine. But yeah, so next up, it's just a matter of like extending this edge so that I create like the flap that's going to have the button holes on it. And then I will attach the buttons to the other panel and seam everything up. And this will be ready to go for the baby shower. Like I said, that's coming up in the beginning of November, so I should have plenty of time to finish that. But I probably am going to take a little bit of a break on this because, like I mentioned earlier, I've been a little bit sick the last week or so, and so like while I've been knitting, I haven't really had the energy or the brain power to do any sort of like intense or creative knitting. So it's just been like knitting these garter squares, and I am real sick, real sick of working on them. I got to put them down for a moment before I finish it up. But at this point, like I said, most of the knitting is done. It's just a matter of like getting everything together. Oh, and I forgot, I got to brag. I've been very diligent because this thing has so many loose ends. Because it uses 5 colors, I thought that like it would probably be more trouble than it's worth to like run the colors up the thing. So basically, every time I change colors, I split the yarn, and it took a couple. It was more like 3 or 4 hours over the last couple nights, weaving in all those ends. And it's actually been kind of a fun challenge, a little bit, because this is bulky yarn, and so like weaving in these ends, you can really feel where the extra bulk is on these. So I've had to be very cautious about like making sure that um that I like every end has to like stay in its own lane. I don't want to like double up the weaving in more than I have to, because it kind of creates this like thick ridge. But for, I mean, it's a pillowcase and it's like on the edge of it, like it'll be fine. It's not a big deal. But yeah, that was kind of like a fun creative problem I had to think about for a little bit, was like really making sure that the ends get woven in nice and neat, because there's so many of them and there's so little room to do them all. But yeah, like I said, this is the knitting's almost done. It's basically just needs to be constructed, but I'm gonna put that aside for just a little bit so that I don't get completely sick and tired of it. Now I have got a new design to show you that you've seen some swatches of in the last few episodes, but I don't think I've actually shown the actual project in progress so far. And so I've got with me here the contrary motion wrap, and it's still on the needles. Like it's kind of hard to see, but there is some like significant zigzag shaping on the edges here, and I can kind of pull them out like one at a time. It's sort of hard to, like I said, it needs to be blocked. But once everything is nice and blocked, all of these like pointy edges will be pulled out so that the fabric has like this zigzag effect on it. And so I am currently working on 2 different versions of this. So this is called the contrary motion wrap, and that is because these color lines, these zigzag lines, are leaning contrary to the shape of the zigzag fabric. So like when the fabric leans out, the stripes are leaning this way, and vice versa. When the fabric's leaning this way, the stripes are leaning this way. And so on these edge colors, it creates these diamond shapes. And then I'm also going to begin working on the second version, which is called parallel motion. And that is where the stripes will move in parallel with the shape of the fabric. So instead of having these diamonds on the end, you'll have another like zigzag stripe that looks like these 3 in the middle. But it's not a super duper like involved design, but I'm really loving the way this looks. And I think a lot of it is the color choices. So this is Acadia from the Fiber Company, which is a yarn I've used several times in the past. I think this is probably my best use of it so far, though. It's a blend of wool and alpaca and silk. And so it has a really nice drape to it, and the silk, like little noils, kind of gives it a fun little like rustic look. And I love the fall color scheme. For the parallel motion, I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to be doing this fall color scheme again or if I'm going to be going with different colors. I need to get back to the yarn store and take a look around and see if I even want to do the second version in the same brand or if I want to try to find another DK. Because basically, like I said, I've got like the two different versions where the stripes are leaning with the shape of the fabric and against the shape of the fabric. But I mean, the concept of like creating a zigzag fabric and zigzag color stripes, like it's not, it's pretty customizable. And so I would like to, maybe not immediately, maybe release these two specific designs first, but just like create like a more like customizable, not so much of a pattern as like a recipe or a schematic for like just doing these zigzags with whatever colors you got in whatever yarn weights you got. But yeah, so working out, trying to like figure out how to do some like customization stuff for this, but it shouldn't be too difficult. Like I said, like it is all just a matter of like very like specifically placed increases and decreases will get you this zigzag fabric. And you do have to kind of to block it a little bit aggressively. I mean, it's not like lace where you're like pinning it down to the point where you're worried it's going to rip. But, normally most of my blocking just involves like washing stuff and laying it flat to dry. But this, you actually have to like break out the pins and really make sure that you're getting the points how you want them and where you want them, and that they're pointy enough, that they're drastically pointy enough without like distorting the fabric. So it's been kind of a fun little challenge, but the knitting itself is pretty easy. It's in Tarsha, only 5 balls. I've got this cute little thing to keep all of my balls of yarn organized. And if you've seen my tutorial for doing intarsia knitting, I was using red solo cups before to keep track of all my yarns, but I think that this is definitely the way to go. If I was going to remake that video, I would definitely suggest something besides individual cups at this point. But yeah, so that's what I'm working on currently. It's a wrap. Like I said, I don't know if it's exactly how long it's going to be. A lot of that is probably going to be how much distance I can get out of this yarn. But the goal, ideal, like in a perfect world, like it would be long enough to like get 2 wraps around your neck. But like I said, we'll have to see. But I'm excited to be working on this one, and hopefully this one, I will do a test knit for it at some point, but hopefully it won't have to be as like long or involved because like I said, once you get the hang of how to shape the fabric and how to move the color lines, it's a pretty simple straightforward knit where you're just doing the same thing over and over again. But yeah, so this is the parallel motion wrap. Really having a lot of fun with this. And I don't know, this one might be finished by the time the next episode rolls around. It's just a matter of just like getting it knit at this point. Like all of the design elements are there and ready to be knit up. But yeah, I'll continue working on this one. Okay, and so last up today, I've got like, it's barely even a swatch at this point. I debated on whether or not I would show it off at all, but it's already out, so I guess I'll go ahead and do it. But I've got just a little swatch where I have been working on some 2-color traveling twisted stitch. And if you've watched my podcast in the past, this is not the first 2-color traveling twisted stitch you've seen from me. Earlier this summer, I was trying to do a wrap design using the same premise, and it was one of those things. It wasn't turning out bad, but it was just like I was just like going through the motions of designing it. I wasn't actually like excited to be doing it. It was almost like I was just like doing it to be doing it, or doing it out of like a sense of obligation. Like I had finished a design, and so it was time to start a new design. And so I was just really like my heart wasn't in it, and so I gave up because I was just kind of going through the motions. But I've come back to the two color traveling twisted stitch now with some new yarn, and this is Knit Picks. Both of these are their Swish DK, and this multicolored is like called Swish Pops or something, but they have like just like the plain like solid color dyed version, and then they had these like variegated multicolor dyes. And I started this swatch mostly just to see if this variegated yarn would even like work at all, if it would even do something that I like, because I was a little suspicious. Because it's not that like hand dyed variegated or commercially dyed variegated yarn. It's not that it's like always going to be bad, but there are some really bad dye jobs out there in terms of like commercially non-hand dyed variegated stuff. And the swatches that Knit Picks put up on their website to advertise this yarn, it looked, I could not, the patterns that sort of like developed from the variegation were just so like grotesque and bizarre looking that like I had to buy some just to see if it was really going to be that bad. And thankfully it was not. It's not really been that bad. I'm really like pleased with what it looks like when you break it up with a solid color. But in this case, I'm not going to do a wrap because I've already got the parallel motion wrap going on. So I've still kind of like tabled the wrap idea, and I would like to instead maybe do something smaller. I'd like to do a hat design with this. So once again, if you've watched in the past couple episodes, I have shown the Ion Spark hat, which is a design I am about to release, hopefully by the end of October, beginning of November. We'll see. Not important now, but it is a design that uses sort of like zigzag decrease lines in the crown. And so what I would like to do in this next design is take those zigzag decreases and extend them down the entire body of the hat by doing traveling twisted stitch for most of the body of the hat. For the parts of the hat where you want the stitch count to remain consistent, doing traveling twisted stitch, two color traveling twisted stitch like this. And then when it's time to do the decreases, transitioning into the zigzag decrease design that I developed for the Ion Spark hat. I think that's going to work. Like it's pretty much, at least when I do it in my mind, doing these two color traveling twisted stitches is similar to doing the two color decrease lines in the Ion Spark. And so I think it's going to work. I think it should be a pretty like easy transition from the traveling twisted stitch to the decreases. But like I said, I haven't tried any of the technique stuff yet. Like I just knit this tiny swatch just to see if I was going to like even want to do something with this variegated yarn. And it's pleasantly surprised me. I'm definitely going to want to do something with it. But this is very much still just like a thought in my head or a glimmer in my eye. There's nothing, I don't really have anything substantial to show for this idea yet, but hopefully in the future that will change. All right, well, I think that's going to do it for me today. Thanks for watching. I think this one probably ended up a little bit shorter than normal, but that's okay. I just wanted to get something out. I was tired of procrastinating on this video. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you like these sorts of videos, then I would really appreciate it if you would go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the channel. I sort of alternate between doing these sort of like project behind the scenes sort of podcast style videos and more like knitting videos with like a specific topic or specific tutorials and techniques in mind. So yeah, if you'd like to see more of that, then go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and I will be back in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.